What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the TV Pilot Review Podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. Each week on this podcast, we are going to watch the pilot episode of a brand new TV series, whether it's released on network TV or streaming, and let you know our thoughts. Should you watch it? Would we continue watching after the pilot? And what was our grade of that pilot? We will break it down every week. I am joined by my podcast partner, Mr. Matthew Fox. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. Excited. 2025 has started off strong on the TV landscape.
It really has. There has been some great TV. One of my main goals heading into 2025 is to watch more TV. I do watch a lot of TV, not nearly as much as Matthew Fox, but he came up with a cool concept that he's been reviewing over in the Music City Drive-In for quite some time, where he reviews the pilots, kind of gives you his thoughts and whether or not he would move forward and just give some grades. So we're going to put that in a podcast platform for you guys. This week's episode features the brand new Max series, The Pitt. The show airs on Thursdays. There's currently three episodes for you to view right now. Maybe by the time you watch this, there might be more. The Netflix series American Primeval, the entire series is streaming right now on Netflix. And the Prime Video series On Call, the entire series is streaming right now on Prime Video. All right, folks. What we're going to do is I'm going to break down an episode. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to let you know our thoughts on it. The first episode we're going to talk about is one show that I was completely surprised by, but it debuted on Max on January 9th. It is called The Pitt, a realistic examination of challenges facing the healthcare workers in America as seen through the lens of a frontline heroes working in modern-day hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Each episode of this 15 episode season is going to be each singular hour, 15-hour emergency room shift at the fictional Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Hospital. The series does star Noah Wiley, Tracy, I don't know how to say her last name, Catherine Lanessa, and many, many more. It's created by R. Scott Gemmell, who worked extensively on series of JAG and ER, and he is the showrunner of NCIS Los Angeles. All right, Matthew, I'm going to let you kick off your thoughts on the episode as a whole.
Yeah, and probably the big thing, this comes from producer John Wells, who, West Wing, ER. John Wells also directed the pilot. And that is why the show is currently being sued by the estate of Michael Crichton as saying it potentially is ripping off ER, because you have Noah Wiley, who was the star of ER, John Wells, who was the executive producer of ER. You're back in a hospital emergency room. And I get the thought process there. We won't comment on litigation, but this is definitely appealing to those fans like myself who are longtime ER watchers. I still see Noah Wiley and think of him as Dr. Carter. I think he slides seamlessly in here. If you watched ER to the conclusion, Noah Wiley left for a couple of seasons, came back during that last season, and had taken over that older mentor role, kind of running the ER. And that's where you really left that series. You kind of pick up here with a guy who maybe has been running an ER for a while and is a little burned out, a little jaded, has suffered some loss. A big plot device here is it's the anniversary. Basically the conceit of the show is it's a 15 episode. Each one is 1 hour in the day of a 15-hour shift for him at this emergency room. And it also happens to be the anniversary of when his mentor died of COVID. I thought that was a really interesting place to jump in. He is great here. I love the pilot. I love the pacing, and I love the emotion.
Yeah, to me, I was kind of surprised, right? You know what I mean? I am, on the surface, when you watch the episode, you're automatically hooked in from moment one, right? You know what I mean? There's an element of it. Noah Wiley, I think is brilliant. You know what I mean? It's a very, very brief time with him in the first episode, when the first moments of the episode, and you're kind of already invested. You already know, especially if you are an average working American, you understand the struggles of going into a hospital and the battles of which you have to go through, especially in a ER style hospital where you're struggling with this. I do love that there is layers within the story that you don't quite know, but you do know. You know what I mean? You know the trauma of it being the anniversary of his mentor's death. But there's so many things to unpack there, and we see that in a few other episodes beyond the first 2 episodes here. But for me, I thought it was brilliantly paced. I love the idea of the concept of filming a show and making each hour above the hour of which they're going through this emergency room. Brilliant idea. Not a new concept at all, but for me, a great first episode. Fox, I do know this is something that we are watching weekly. So I do know that this is an easy answer of would you continue watching, but what did you grade the pilot, and confirm my suspicions that we are going to continue to watch this weekly?
Yeah, I did really enjoy it. The first 2 episodes get released in a batch. The third one dropped on Thursday. It'll come out every Thursday. I think they're trying to do a timed like 9 Eastern release. I don't know how that always works. In the streaming world, you're not like tuning in at a specific time, but that's when it'll come available. I think people on Max are used to that, especially with a lot of the HBO shows that drop at a very specific time. And I thought this was great. One of the better pilots I've seen this year. Probably my favorite pilot so far this year is actually an NBC streaming series called Lockerbie. That just has an incredible pilot and sort of fades. This one, I actually like the second episode even more than the pilot. I would give the pilot probably about 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat there. I enjoyed it, and I agree with you. It's crazy because when you watch the first episode, you're hooked, but then the second episode has even more meat to the bone, right? You know what I mean? It's even more stronger than the first episode, which really kind of drags you. It provides much more deeper things. So definitely something I plan on continuing to watch on a week-to-week basis. All right, moving right along to a show that also debuted on January 9th of this year. I didn't realize both these shows debuted on the same exact day.
I think all 3 of them did, actually.
Actually, yeah, all 3 shows debuted on January 9th, which is hilarious. I didn't even realize that. But the next show that we're going to talk about is the Netflix original series American Primeval. The show is set in 1857 during the Utah War. The series examines the fight to gain control of American West and the violent clash between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the cultures in the Utah Territory, centering on the events surrounding the Mountain Meadow Massacre. The series comes from Peter Berg, who directs the series, then also written by Mark L. Smith. Mark L. Smith, known for writing credits on Twisters, The Boy in the Boat, The Midnight Sky, and The Revenant, and many, many more. Going into this, obviously, this reunites Taylor Kitsch with Peter Berg. Obviously, for those of you at home, Friday Night Light lovers like me, reunited those two. So Taylor, who I think is one incredible actor, so it's great to see him in a lead role. Betty Gilpin's also in this with some, Jay Courtney, with Shea Wingham, and many, many more. All right, I'll kick us off with this one. I was pretty excited about this just based on some, just obviously I'm a big fan of Peter Berg. I think that he does great work with this direction. Mark L. Smith has some good stuff. And then, of course, Taylor Kitsch and Betty Gilpin. I'm a big fan of Betty Gilpin as well. The first episode for me, I was kind of hooked from the beginning. It's hard sometimes whenever you're watching Netflix show versus like this is the differentiating, like the weekly series, like the Pitt, right? You're only getting a little bit of taste. You're not watching all of it at once. So it's like hard to just judge it off the pilot. But for me, I thought the pilot was pretty solid. I thought it was pretty ruthless, and I thought that we laid the land pretty well. I was kind of hooked based on it. There was a lot of it takes time to develop. So that's one thing that I would definitely recommend with the patience of the series, because again, we're binging this all at one time, or most of us would binge it all at one time versus kind of just that one episode thing. But I like the pilot. Matt, I do think that you were on the opposite end of that, right?
Yeah. What's interesting, looking at Mark L. Smith's filmography, tonally kind of all over the place. I had most often heard when they were marketing the show talking about him having written The Revenant, and I think that is probably tone-wise and pacing-wise a good comparison here. I think when you think about Peter Berg and Taylor Kitsch, you probably think about Friday Night Lights. Friday Night Lights has a very specific look and kind of tone and feel that is not at all what you're getting here. This is kind of a dark and violent and grimy world, and it's really going to depend, probably, how you feel about that. I'm also curious if this has the feel to me of being kind of a limited mini series. Some people have talked about, will there be a second season? There was no point when I was going through this that I thought it wants to be an ongoing. Did you ever feel that way?
Not a single time. Not a single time. And to me, for with Peter Berg, I think that this kind of is reminiscent of his direction of Lone Survivor, right? You know what I mean? Which Taylor also worked on as well. So you kind of get that. It was I think it was easy for Berg to kind of really adapt to this nature of this world because of that film. Doesn't have similar beats per se, but also no, never one time in the entirety of watching the series I felt like it came to kind of a perfect resolution for me that I didn't need to watch any more of it.
Well, and it kind of ends in a place where I don't know how you would exactly. It reminds me a little bit of 1885 or 1883. Sorry. For those of you who are fans of kind of that Yellowstone world, 1883 had a very strong cast. You're mostly kind of a road story going through really hostile territory and the impact that takes trying to navigate to get from place to place in the American West. They throw in some stuff here. I don't think it does a super great job of fleshing out the Mormon angle and the Mormons fighting the U.S. Army and both of them fighting Native American tribes. There are a lot of things going on. I think the struggle for me, probably, and you feel this to me early on, is there are a lot of potential stories and threads and backstories, even some stuff going on with Betty Gilpin and Taylor Kitsch and his story and all the ancillary characters and people that you're meeting. I mean, Dane DeHaan is a pretty famous actor who gets put in a storyline that I think if you would have almost cut that entire arc out of the thing, I don't know if I would have missed it. There are some things about the back and forth between Gilpin and Taylor Kitsch that I thought took too long to resolve in a meaningful way. But the craft here is strong. It's going to be an acquired taste in terms of whether you would continue watching this. I did go ahead and finish the series, even though I would probably give the pilot 2.5 stars. It did not hook me in a great way. I thought it was a little bit more of a struggle. It remained somewhat of a struggle going all the way through. I'm glad that I finished it. Sometimes you go through and finish a series you're on the fence about, and you're like, there's 10 hours of my life I'll never get back. That's not the case here with this one. And it being only 6 episodes does make it a much tighter, easier to swallow commitment. Some of those, in fact, one of those episodes I think is only 36 minutes. So they're not overly long. Sometimes you have these limited series and they're like 110, 120 an episode, and looking at you, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and you're like, my God, this is taking a long time to get through. These ones go at a pretty good speed, especially if you're streaming on Netflix and you can adjust your speed, as I may or may not do from time to time. But I didn't love this pilot, but I thought it was decent, and it was a decent watch.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this entire season was that it was only 6 episodes. I can't fathom the idea that there should be more shows like that. I know people complain, oh, there's too many shows that are so. First off, it's a limited series or whatever you want to call it. But to me, 6 episodes was perfect for this. If it was any more episodes, I probably would have not liked it or loved it as much, because you're gonna try to explore certain things more than you did. But for me, American Primeval, I was hooked from the beginning. I definitely think that you should definitely check it out. All right, this is a show I had heard about early December. I had gotten screeners for the show, and I was like, man, I really would like to watch this. But then I was like, I don't have time. We're in the middle of award season. Don't have time to watch anything. And then I got a good text message from a friend of mine, Mr. Matthew Fox, that said, hey, man, On Call is pretty damn good. And ended up watching this with my wife. And we binge watched this in like one sitting. I think we had 1 or 2 episodes left. It might have been 2, because like there's only 30-minute episodes. But the series we're talking about right now is the Prime Video series on Call. It comes from the creators of Chicago PD, Shooter, and Hightown. It is a police procedural series and drama that follows the Long Beach Police Department, where veteran training officer Tracy Harmon and her rookie partner Alex Diaz, as they respond to emergency calls on the streets of Long Beach, California, while also navigating the fallout of the loss of a fellow officer. The two main characters of this show are Troyan Balsarario and Brandon Laracente. I was going to try to say something else, but that probably would have been bad for TV here. But
You tried.
I did try, but I was going to say something else, but I didn't want to say it the way that I thought my head was going to try to say it. So I definitely am trying to continue this TV pilot review series in the future. But the rest of the cast is kind of there, but Troyan and Brandon are both our main actors that we kind of need to focus on throughout the entirety of the show. Fox, I'll let you kick it off about the pilot, and then of course I know both of us finished the show.
Yeah, and so basically what you get here, this one, it comes from Uber producer Dick Wolf, and it was actually created in part by his son Elliot Wolf, which is what got him involved. And you might be thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of a Law and Order or Chicago med. No, this one has a little bit of a different edge to it. I think it's a chef's kiss that each episode is around 30 minutes or less. Some of them clock in the high 20s, and that's with credits and opening sequences and stuff. I also liked the way that it combines traditionally shot narrative footage with body cam footage, especially when the officers who are on patrol, this is the Long Beach Police Department, are making entry and doing cases. Essentially, you are put with a senior training officer, Tracy Harmon, that is the Troyan Belisario, and she gets her brand new rookie, Alex Diaz, played by Brandon Lacrente. We'll go with that. And they are kind of paired together, and it's a little bit about them going on this journey together. Diaz trying to learn to be a cop. Tracy Harmon, you start with an opening entry of a Long Beach police officer being killed by a gang member. It turns out that was a previous trainee that Tracy Harmon had. She also has a little bit of a adversarial, somewhat frosty relationship with some of her colleagues because of some of the things that have happened in the past that right or wrongly got put on her. You see how that plays out a little bit even right from the jump in the pilot, where Diaz is getting conflicting information. Eric LaSalle, this is a great week for calling back to ER. Eric LaSalle, who is Dr. Benton on there, Dr. Peter Benton, plays a senior sergeant here, Sergeant Lasman. He also directed 4 of the 8 episodes here. He has become a very polished TV director. He's still a very polished TV performer. You also get Lori Loughlin popping in here from time to time. I know a lot was made about Lori Loughlin being in here, but she's not in it a whole lot. I think the real find here is Troyan Belisario. People are going to recognize her because she was a main actress on Pretty Little Liars. I was not. And, that is not a show that is squarely aimed at Matthew Fox. That is not a show that I was into. And a lot of what I have read is people being blown away and amazed that she had this in her repertoire, because this is nothing like that. This is a very different, harder edge. I would give this pilot, I thought the pilot was good and had some stuff that hooks me, but I think it gets a lot better as you go on. I would give the pilot probably about 3 stars. I finished it probably a couple of days, because really with those half-hour episodes, there's only an 8-episode season. You're only talking about like between 3.5 and 4 hour total commitment here. It takes you longer to watch The Brutalist, and this is a much more satisfying watch.
Yeah, so that's facts. So for me, it was interesting because you watch the first episode and you're hooked, right? You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily, you're right, it's not exactly the perfect pilot by any stretch of the imagination, but it does enough to make you want to watch more. And that's the big difference, is it doesn't have to be the perfect pilot. Like, that's what TV is about, right? But however, it has to be good enough that you want to click next, especially in the day and age of streaming, especially whenever all you have to do is not like an episode and click exit and then move on to a different show. There's a little random thumbs up for you that I did not mean to do. But yeah, so that being said, I was thoroughly impressed with their ability to create an exciting enough pilot to make me want to watch more. As each episode progressed, I was completely floored by Troyan's Belisara's performance. I thought she was phenomenal. Not to take anything away from Brandon here, but I felt like she was such an emotional beat. And time and time and time again throughout this series, she stepped up in the matters that the matters that the matters that whatever I'm trying to say.
The moments that mattered.
Yeah, the moments that matter the most, whatever. But that said, yeah, so I was kind of impressed with that. And the overall pacing of the show is perfect. I felt like the 30-minute episodes, the body cam footage reminded me of End of Watch, the Jake Gyllenhaal, Michael Penny movie, which I thought, it's a great movie. But it reminded me of those, and their utilization of that was very nice because I feel like it kind of gives it a different perspective. Definitely a unique way to shoot the series. But for the pilot, I'm on the same boat, about the 3 stars. But man, I binge watched this in 2 days. I love it. There's no renewal for a second season, but all I know is I would watch a second season.
Yeah, and it leaves in a place where you could see that coming up. So hopefully we will get that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So that being said, before we go, anything else that you've watched as a quick rundown of anything good? I will say for me, I finished Landman this past week. I am not normally a fan of Sheridan's universe. I don't think his shows are all that great. I think some of his shows are vastly overrated. But this one I watched to completion because I was hooked because of Billy Bob Thornton. I thought his performance was phenomenal. It's probably the best work I might have ever seen out of that guy. But I thought that was great. I finally finished Squid Game season 2. My daughter got me hooked. I never looked back. Really enjoyed it. Excited to see what season 3 has to offer us here later this year. But anything else kind of pique your interest here in the month of January?
Yeah, I referenced Lockerbie: A Search for the Truth. That was one of the first new shows that came out this year. Landed on Peacock on January 2nd. Has a phenomenal pilot. Just the emotions and everything. Colin Firth, kind of the main actor here, carrying it through. The rest of it, a little bit procedurally, never matches the height to me of that pilot with the way that they recreate that event and some of the immediate emotions afterward. But that was a solid little binge, only 5 episodes, so not a whole lot of a commitment there. And then among other new shows, if you are looking for something that's a little more constrained, because all the things we've talked about here when you're on streaming and cable, they definitely play up to that. I would say the Pitt doesn't go all in totally on language and violence, but they are a little more graphic with some of the medical procedures, and there is going to be language at times. Obviously, very graphic with American Primeval, and there is plenty of language and violence on call because they don't have those. So if you're looking for a medical show, maybe that's a little more restrained. I have actually enjoyed the first 2 episodes of Doc on Fox. Molly Parker plays a brilliant diagnostician who's head of internal medicine department at a big hospital. She's a prickly individual in terms of her bedside manner, which is essentially non-existent. She's very standoffish, seems to have an icy relationship with everyone, including her family. She gets into a car accident in the pilot. She has some head trauma. She wakes up and thinks Barack Obama's still the president, and it's 2016. So her personality has kind of gotten a reset, and you learn that some of the things that played into it. She had a child that passed away, which really ate on her. She had a relationship that collapsed, and so all of that kind of gets reset. Part of it is her discovering all these things in her life that are different, because when she wakes up, she thinks she's married. She thinks she has 2 kids. Her ex-husband actually turns out to be the guy that runs the hospital, has to not only break it to, hey, we're no longer married, but by the way, your son died, and you have to re-experience that trauma. But in the midst of that, it's her trying to become a doctor again, and I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. It's one of the shows that I have put on my radar because of you. I'm trying to remember what else I've watched this year. I don't think there's one other TV show I watched. Don't remember what it was. I'm watching Dexter Original Sin weekly right now, which I'm kind of enjoying a little bit.
And if you're missing Tim Allen, he's back with a new sitcom with him and Kat Dennings. Not too bad. Is a lead into Abbott Elementary, which remains a delightful watch week to week.
And if you're not watching The Traitors, we are watching that week to week right now. Season 3, we're covering that over in the Love and Reality podcast. Got Matthew Fox to join me on that, testing our friendship with some stuff in the real world of reality TV. But yeah, excited to talk about TV pilot reviews with my good friend here, Matthew Fox, what I would like to call a TV connoisseur. But we thank you guys so much for tuning into the first episode of the TV pilot review podcast, and we'll be back in the near future.